growing outrage today over the brutal murder of a beautiful 23-year-old waitress on a commuter train. The accused killer has a history of violence and mental illness, yet was free on no cash bail.
A young woman runs away to escape the terrors of war, where she seeks refuge and a new life in America. She learns English, gets a job, makes friends, and has a dream of being a veterinary assistant. However, on one of her trips on a summer evening in Charlotte, North Carolina, her trip is cut short in a vicious assault on a light rail train, murdered by a stranger in an unprovoked attack, initiating a national discussion around the issues of crime, mental health, and justice. It is about Iryna Zarutska, a Ukrainian refugee whose murder turned into a political scapegoat, revealing the hidden fault lines of the American approach to violent crime and the inability of its systems to both defend the innocent and treat the mentally ill. The story by Iryna Zarutska does not start in Charlotte, but in the war-torn Ukraine. The bright young artist had to make a painful choice in 2022 when the Russian troops invaded her native country, to escape or to remain and put it all on the line. She decided to live and fled the country together with her mother, sister, and brother, and left behind everything she knew to find refuge in a country that she never visited. Iryna was 26 years old and had the type of resilience that war tends to provide and seldom recognize. She graduated Synergy College in Kyiv and had a degree in art and restoration, her genius being seen in everything she touched. Her obituary would go on to mention how she generously gave out her creativity and gave family and friends her works of art. She was fond of carving and creating eclectic and unique clothing that was a true reflection of her lively spirit. She was able to work in Zapeti pizzeria to support herself, and it was there that she was more than just an employee. The restaurant has lost a friend as well as an incredible employee, it said on social media when she died. "We miss you, Iryna. We miss you more than words." Those who knew her described someone who had truly found her place in Charlotte. Despite enduring daily bombing in Ukraine, despite the agony of not knowing if you're going to live or breathe another day, Iryna had built something beautiful in her new home. She had friends, work she enjoyed, and a boyfriend who cared about her. She had survived war only to find peace, or so it seemed. The 22nd of August began like any other evening of Iryna Zarutska. She was going home after what we may suppose was another day of working towards her dreams, another day of the ordinary life she had struggled so much to create. On her way home, she texted her boyfriend to inform him that she would be home soon, as the Charlotte area transportation system Blue Line train was carrying her through the city. It was an easy word, the sort of conversation that associates that couples do without consciously. Yet such would be the last words that Iryna ever said to a person that she loved. Her world would change forever, and she would die moments after sending that text in a manner that could not be understood. Behind her on the train was a 34-year-old man by the name of Decarlos Brown, whose life had followed a radically different course than hers. Whilst Iryna had been running away to seek a safe haven, Brown had been fighting his own demons. Incidentally, without a single word of provocation, anger, or contact between the two men, Brown started stabbing Iryna in the throat with a knife 3 times. She did not have any opportunity to protect herself, to escape, no time to comprehend why it was happening to her. It was as random an attack as it was vicious. Iryna Zarutska, who survived bombing in Ukraine, who had constructed her own life through nothing, who was loved by all people who knew her, was murdered by a complete stranger, as investigators would later say, in an entirely unprovoked attack.
Surveillance video shows Iryna Zarutska, a refugee from war-torn Ukraine who sought peace and safety in the USA, stepping onto the train after finishing her shift at a pizza restaurant. In the seat behind her is 34-year-old Decarlos Brown. Watch as he slowly opens a pocket knife, then stands and without warning plunges the knife into his victim in an unprovoked attack. He strides away, and at first, even Iryna doesn't seem to realize how badly wounded she is, but her life is ebbing away.
We need to consider the life of Decarlos Brown in order to explain this tragedy, but we should not confuse understanding with excusing. The story of Brown is a story of mental illness, criminal background, systematic failures, and they all came together in the most unfortunate manner ever. Brown had been degrading over the years. His sister, Tracy Brown, later told that her brother had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and had serious hallucinations and paranoia. The disease had changed the man she recognized as her brother into a man who was hardly recognizable to her. Tracy said to CNN that she knew he was fighting something, but she wanted to know what. Brown had serious, persistent delusions. He told her over and over that he had been implanted with a chip by the government. He had difficulties in holding a conversation and was not able to work. His sense of reality was at best weak. The warning signs were there. At some point in 2022, Brown became violent and even assaulted his sister. Tracy chose to dismiss the charges despite being arrested because her brother needed mental health care badly, which she could not afford to lose her heart with the arrest. It was a choice of love and caring, but it demonstrated the impractical place families are placed at when it comes to serious mental illness. Only a few months before the attack, Brown had been charged with misuse of 911 when he called police seeking them to look into what he thought was some man-made material that dictated when he ate, walked, and talked. Brown got angry and kept calling 911 when officers told him that this was a medical matter and it was not in their scope. One of the magistrate judges set him free on a written agreement to turn up in his next hearing. There were no other conditions to be stipulated. This decision, later said by the White House, had made him free to slaughter an innocent woman a few months afterwards. After Tracy Brown talked to her brother after his arrest in the murder of Iryna and inquired why the man had raped the young woman, his answer was chilling in its simplicity because she was reading his mind. The political firestorm. What would have been a simple case of an insane man performing an atrocious act soon turned out to be something much deeper and divisive. The killing of Iryna Zarutska revealed the fault lines in American politics that were much deeper than criminal justice and involved immigration, mental health policy, federal oversight, and the perennial question of what is more crucial to the people, their safety or their rights. The Democratic mayor of Charlotte, Vi Lyles, was the first to publish a statement that would plague her term in office. Instead of her talking about the victim or the atrocity of the crime, her remark provided compassion to the suspect and a discussion on the larger problem of homelessness and mental illness. This was a tone-insensitive response at best, seeking to downplay the death of Iryna and justify the murderer she was killed by. The backlash was swift and severe, under mounting criticism, especially after transit officials released the disturbing video of the attack. Mayor Lyles was forced to issue additional statements. She eventually blamed the attack on a tragic failure by the courts and magistrates, and announced increased security measures for the transit system. In her revised statement, Lyles wrote, "There must be a bipartisan response to the repeat offenders who are getting away without being punished, and those who cannot receive treatment on their mental illness and are set on the streets." But the damage was done. North Carolina Republicans capitalized on the case by using it as a point of reference to what they described as soft, on-crime Democratic policies. Kyle Kirby, the chair of the Mecklenburg County Republican Party, made what would be one of the most famous, and perhaps the most tragic, statements about the case at a press conference at a Charlotte light rail station.
Remember, Iryna Zarutska survived in Ukraine in a bomb shelter. In war-torn Ukraine, she made her way from that country to Charlotte, seeking refuge and promise, and she was given the edge of a knife. She died because of our complacency.
Remember, Iryna Zarutska lived in Ukraine in a bomb shelter, Kirby said. Being in war-torn Ukraine, she left that nation to Charlotte in the hopes of protection and a new life, and they gave her the end of a knife. The political implications were far-reaching, much further than Charlotte. The case was viewed as confirmation of his hard-on crime agenda by President Trump, who had recently assumed office. He suggested that the death penalty should be pursued against Brown, who was now charged with first-degree murder to the state, and with carrying out an act resulting in death on a mass transportation system on the federal level.
A beautiful young girl that never had problems in life, with a magnificent future in this country. And now she's dead. In Charlotte, North Carolina, we saw the results of these policies when a 23-year-old woman who came here from Ukraine met her bloody end on a public train.
The case has emphasized the unattainable situation that judges and magistrates are forced to handle on a daily basis. This was a misdemeanor that Brown had been charged with, misuse of 911. Although his actions were evidently alarming, the law had very little to do with an individual who did not commit any violent offense, yet was obviously facing a serious mental illness. Another system failure was demonstrated through the desperate measures of the family to place Brown in long-term mental health treatment. Although there was unmistakable indication of a serious psychiatric case, bureaucratic hurdles made him elusive to his mother to get him the attention he required. It is a sad irony that a system that failed to force him to take treatment when he needed it could end up accusing him of killing him when it was too late. Seeking justice and meaning. With Decarlos Brown on the verge of death penalty, the case has remained contentious on the question of justice, mental illness, and safety of the people. The charges that have been filed already mean Brown will be made to answer the full demands of his actions, though federal prosecutors are still investigating. The enhanced security measures announced for Charlotte's transit system, including 30 additional security personnel, bike patrols, and urban terrain vehicles, represent tangible responses to the tragedy, but they also serve as a reminder that Iryna Zarutska's death has changed the very fabric of daily life in Charlotte. The assassination of Iryna Zarutska makes us face some unpleasant facts about American society. The murder of a young refugee who had fled the war in her homeland by a mentally ill man, whose family had desperately attempted to seek help, had been the result of it. It was a political football, and both parties took advantage of her death to serve their interests as her family mourned. However, maybe it is not really about politics that we should learn in this tragedy. It is about the basic duty that we owe to the innocent, to take care of the mentally ill, to keep the streets safe, and to save human dignity, to make sure that a person like Iryna Zarutska, a person who sacrificed all to establish a new life in America, can ride a train home without fear. When we recall Iryna Zarutska, we must recall not only her death, but her life of courage, of creativity, and of unlimited love. She had 100 better things to do than the violence which took her life. The question now arises whether her death will result in positive changes that will stop future tragedies, or it will indeed be another case study in how systems that are designed to take care of us all fail. Ultimately, Iryna Zarutska should not be remembered through her political discussions that the death provoked, but as a reminder that there is a person behind every tragedy and was a person who deserves to live, to love, and to follow their dreams safely. She had gone to America in search of sanctuary and hope. We failed to provide both. Now we can only make sure that the loss of her life has not gone to waste.